Hello, Tom Lebecki here with the latest edition of the New Theory podcast. So during this tough time, COVID, etc., I think about my old friends. I think about the friends that I haven't reached out to, do a wellness check, see what's going on. So Gene Panasenko, who is on the podcast, who's going to be the podcast, came to mind, and I was just telling him offline that during the shutdown, I really took the time to re-examine a lot of my values, and which meant watch a lot of YouTube because I had a little bit of time on my hands. And politically, candidly, is I'm doing my best to keep an open mind. So this show is generally agnostic. We're generally in the center, just the way I am. However, we open and welcome all topics. Today's topic is going to be why Trump should be reelected. Now, if you are a Trump supporter, this may or may not reinforce why you're supporting. And if you're a Trump hater, do not turn this off, because I just want you to listen from a really good gentleman's point of view, a very successful immigrant who came to this country, who exemplifies the American dream. Gene Panasenko, welcome to the New Theory podcast. How are you doing today?
Tom, thank you so much. Again, great seeing you, and thanks for getting me on the show again. It's almost like in a flash that 4 years flew by since we had the last show on your wonderful podcast. And by the way, congratulations to you for growing your mini, which is becoming not so mini empire any longer. I mean, in spite of all the downturns in the economy and the whole thing, I mean, all of your outfits, all your media businesses have been doing so well, and I've been following you very closely.
Awesome.
So again, congratulations to you. You're definitely doing the right thing.
Thank you. And it's about you though, because I appreciate the compliments. So give our audience a little bit about your background. And I know you've been in front of the show, but give a little bit more about your background and kind of set up, how you got involved with Trump. And your story is really meaningful. So take as much time as you need to build up your story. And then how did you get involved with politics?
Absolutely. Well, again, we've heard this adage, many times in different shapes and form. You can ignore the politics, but the politics will not ignore you over the long term. So, regardless of how, politically, indifferent or agnostic you're trying to be, at some point you need to take a position if you care about yourself, if you care about your family, and you just had an addition in your family. So that gives you even more reasons to be concerned about what's awaiting for us, tomorrow, and hopefully many, many, many years down the line. Yeah. As a family, as a nucleus of the society, and as a country as a whole, what made America the best country in the world is really the fact that we have always been so strong, blended together, regardless of the backgrounds and regardless of the gods, we may or may not be praying to, it really kept us as united as we could be, and that's what made the country the most prosperous country on the planet, and by far the most successful. So the freedoms, I mean, the incredible benefit that comes with the privilege of being an American citizen. Again, we know that freedom is not free, but as somebody who grew up in the former Soviet Union, I was born in Ukraine, and it's been now 30 years. I can't believe, again, I came here 3 decades ago. Falling on my knees and kissing the American soil, and thanking God that I'm here. It truly takes, living in an environment like the communist Soviet Union, where, millions and tens of millions of people were just annihilated, physically destroyed, executed, sent to the labor camps, which was basically just deferred execution, for just speaking up their minds. So, millions of brave Americans gave their lives for that freedom of speech, and I'm always happy and proud to exercise that amendment, freedom of speech. So to me, it's critically important that the people understand the environment we're in right now, and what we have been going through, and what we need to be paying attention to. We spoke on your program about 4 years back. Again, it's just like yesterday.
Yes.
And it's not that I had a crystal ball, but based on all the information I had, and again, I'm right here in New York City, so I've been fortunate to actually, be a lot closer to the events, developing here when Donald Trump was still a candidate at that point. He was running for the for the election, but knowing on his incredible, unparalleled, I would be saying, track record of his businessman, his common sense position, attitude to so many things, including but not limited to race. I mean, the guy has been surrounded, with black entertainers and black politicians, including but not limited to Al Sharpton. I guess you had him on one of your
Yes, it
programs as
did.
well, Tom, right?
I was
Again, he was absolutely agnostic to the color of the skin, the background of the skin, for as long as the people are willing to work hard and contribute whatever it takes, to the economy, the society overall. They stick with the good American fundamentals. Then they were good for him, and that was one of his political platform things. Keeping the people united regardless of the backgrounds.
okay.
And again, we were witnessing what has been happening. The lowest unemployment in the country, amongst African Americans, the lowest unemployment amongst Latinos, Asian Americans. I mean, really incredible, truly unprecedented growth of the economic numbers. Millions of jobs that have been shipped overseas over not just years during the Obama administration, but decades, prior to that. We've been losing manufacturing jobs, to Asia, to, whatever other places in the world. And his opponents were laughing when Donald Trump, still as a candidate, he was saying, hey, if we do the right things politically, economically, we're going to be able to bring those millions of jobs, manufacturing jobs, back to the U.S. And we have seen that growth.
Hold on, Gene. You're giving us a lot of good stuff, but what I want to do is I want to unpack some of it because it's so meaningful. I don't want to gloss over.
Right.
So the first part is coming from a communist regime and then coming to a land, the land of opportunity. How did that shape your politics? Were you initially, kind of Republican all the way and it grew into Trump? Were you, to start out, were you, more on the left? Just my experience, and this is, if it sounds like I'm doing a broad brush stroke, it is what it is. My experience of friends that were formerly from, from the Ukraine, from formerly USSR, obviously communism was not something to be celebrated. And that was the extremely far left, right? But I've found most of my friends that were Russian and or Ukrainian.
And I'm Ukrainian. You remember that, Tom?
Well, that's why. I'm Ukrainian. I found them to be more left leaning. I'm not gonna lie to you. More, and this might be, and this is something I want to talk about, where the left, the Overton window, the left may have went so far left that some of the left is right, and we'll talk about some of the thought leaders I've been following. But so what were your political leanings 30 years ago, and how did it kind of form to where you are today?
Well, again, you nailed it when you said, communism, so again, I've seen family members, of mine that have been repressed, or, and that definitely affected my overall position towards communism. Communism is no good. Forget about my personal feelings or experience.
Yeah.
It may or may not be, biased, but reality is, look, I mean, communism destroyed, well over 100, 120 million, depending on the source you're looking at, of human lives worldwide. I mean, I'm not talking just about the former Soviet Union. I'm talking about all the areas worldwide where the communism has been exported, being in China, where the people are dying to this day, through, executions or labor camps, or just disappear outright, organ harvesting, all those things, to all the pretty much countries of Southeastern Asia. Ho Chi Minh, he was a disciple of Marxist and Lenin. He actually studied in the former Soviet Union, then still the Soviet Union, and that's how, the Soviets exported communism to Vietnam and Laos and Cambodia. And again, we've seen millions and millions of people, Khmer Rouges in Cambodia, and I've been fortunate to actually travel the world and see some of the places. To this day in Cambodia, they have those kill fields, where they still stack, countless number of skulls and skeletons, I mean, it's a teeny fraction of what has been actually done by the communists in Cambodia, but it just it gives a very good reminder of what communism is about. Where people like you and I, we basically by default we would be falling in that category of the section of population that needs to be exterminated, because we would be absolutely against their norms and the fundamentals.
Yeah. So So, but the important question though, and then I want to get on to my next question is, and take as long as you need, but did you start out right leaning 30 years ago, or when you got into politics, or something you grew
Right.
into over
Right.
time?
Right. Again, when I came to the country 30 years back, I was really just trying to stay alive. I really had no
Yeah.
time or desire, to be paying attention to the politics. I was not a citizen, as you know. It takes a few years before you get naturalized as an American citizen. So again, I was just trying to figure out what's going on. The first Gulf War broke out. When I came over in 1990. George, the first Bush. And then Clinton's 8 years, and all those countless wars. I mean, either started by Republicans or Democrats. I mean, they did not really give me a lot of excitement because I had some friends that served in the military. Um, we know. Look, I mean, a lot of them they never made it back. In one piece. They came back draped in American flags. Their bodies, the coffins. People came with limbs, blown off, by the landmines, by shrapnel. Um, PTSD consequences. So again, wars are no good regardless of who is unleashing them. But again, going back to your question, Tom, I had no time or desire to really be paying attention. I was really trying to stay focused on getting in the industry, to become a financial advisor, studying, working hard. Um, but then as the time flew by, I become naturalized as an American citizen, and a lot of people, they ignore that thing. But when you do get naturalized, you're actually being offered to sign up immediately for voting, and they do allow you an option to elect who you would like to be um, registered with, what party, what affiliation. And by then, I pretty much formed an idea that, hey, if again, not paying attention to the cliches or the name tags, but I figured, hey, Republican Party historically has delivered a lot more, as far as creation of jobs, and standing for the good core American values. The fact, little known fact to a lot of liberals and Democrats, that Martin Luther King actually, of all people, to those who are rabid anti-Republicans, he was a Republican actually, and
Wow.
and KKK was basically an arm, an arm of the Democratic Party. So again, a lot of facts. I go by the facts. I don't go by the rumors. So studying all that information, really speaking with some of the smartest people that I've been very fortunate to come across in my life, in my business career. I've been able to form those opinions, and that really led me to become a Republican. Uh, but again, the names, they're meaningless. When I worked on Donald Trump's um, electoral campaigns when he was running for the president, and I spoke with literally tens of thousands of folks in those swing states that we've been calling nonstop, pretty much, trying to educate people and explain to them, sir, ma'am, with all due respect, the fact that you have 10 generations that voted Democrats, it does not mean that you need to do the same thing only because of the name Republican or Democrat. Let's take a look at the facts. And really, by delivering to them the facts, and a couple of them I just mentioned, I've been fortunate to really convince quite a few folks in all those swing states, to really vote for Donald Trump because,
Yeah, but hold on.
again, everything that he,
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Gene. Sorry, because I want to finish it. Go ahead.
yeah. So again, look, I mean, promises are promises, and historically we have seen that promises of politicians, I mean, they can be trusted only so much. We have seen many people on both ends of the aisle, both sides of the aisle, being it Republicans, George Bush, the older one, which was proclaiming that, hey, I'm not going to raise your taxes, and obvious enough, once he gets elected, he jack up the taxes, and the Clintons. And so again, to me, it was more not about the party affiliation, the name behind the party. Again, the fact that Martin Luther King, I mean, he was a Republican, KKK, it was Democrats, or so it definitely influenced me. But I always look at the facts. How safe can you keep the country? It's a fact that the main job of the federal government is to keep its citizens safe and protected. And when you have porous borders, when you have millions and tens of millions of illegals pouring into the country, committing various levels of crimes. I have a very good client of mine whose only daughter has been killed by the illegal alien. And those are devastating things without any kind of ramifications. So all of the above, influenced me to vote for Donald Trump because of the job creation, because of protecting this country, because of incentivizing businesses to hire more employees by giving them tax reliefs, by repatriating trillions of dollars, of which I mentioned in my previous interview a few years back, Tom. If you remember, trillions of dollars, have been repatriated because Donald Trump gave the corporate America an incentive, a huge $1 trillion incentive to bring that money back and create new jobs and new facilities.
Okay. So, and what I'll do is I'll put your old podcast in the link below, because what I want to do is I don't want to minimize your experience, but I want to kind of get to the current election and his tenure as president. So Gene is a very successful financial planner. You kind of picked up on that. Came from Ukraine with nothing but at best a suitcase, and has grown into having a very successful career. And in 2015-16, dedicated a year of his life to get Donald Trump in office with, frankly, personal and financial sacrifice. And, it appears that for the most part, he became president and a lot of the stuff that you wanted to happen happened. So let's first go through, I want to do pre-COVID. I'm going to bucket pre-COVID and post-COVID. So you talked about great economic growth. You talked about, high unemployment across all different groups. We're going to fact check, and not just with Gene, but we do fact check. So if there's anything we're wrong about, put comments in below. But for the most part, I think we're comfortable that great economic prosperity, a little bit off the heels of the 07-09, getting out of that. But nevertheless, Trump did demonstrate strong economics. I do want to bullet point, though, Gene, and you're right, in terms of African Americans and blacks in this country, where it is a super hot topic right now. The facts that I would like to list are, Tim Scott generated the First Step program, which allowed disproportionately a large amount of African American males and out of jail earlier than would normally. The Urban Enterprise Zone, which gets a little heat, but as an economy guy, an economist, if you will, by investing in the inner cities, whether white or black, will generate activity for the area.
Exactly.
It will allow entrepreneurs and smart people that way to start businesses and then help that neighborhood, but also people in that neighborhood. And it was Booker T. Washington that said there's 3 things that will assist African Americans to get out of this hole, and white Americans are incentivized to help these folks, right? So number 1 is entrepreneurship, number 2 is education, and number 3 is great personal choices. And just my personal opinion is a lot of the programs on the Republican side have been a little bit more consistent with at least 2 out of 3, to be honest, right? I always felt education was a little bit more generous on the Democratic side, just personal feeling. However, with that being said, though, Donald Trump also has, funded almost, I won't say a blank check, but instead of coming year over year, historical black colleges found it easier, or at least more liberally funded during this administration. Now, I'm not saying this exempts Trump from a lot of his rhetoric, and I'll get into the stuff that I have a beef with him in a minute. But first, let's give Gene a second to share, some of the stuff you're proud of during his administration specifically, and some of the policy that, you worked hard to get him elected. What are some of those policies that you're excited about?
Thank you, Tom. So again, the main responsibility of the federal government is really to keep the country and its citizens safe. And we have seen incredible reduction of aliens, in this country, illegal aliens, construction of the wall, multi-billion-dollar increase in the budget for the Border Patrol Agency and Homeland Security folks. All that really allowed to keep the country safer from the presence of all those, people that were not supposed to be here. They may or may not be, great human beings. God bless them all if they're good human beings. But we know that a lot of people, they've been pouring into the country, with horrible backgrounds, criminal backgrounds. MS-13, I live on Long Island. It had horrendous, track record over years. Multitude of people, tortured, brutally executed, including some little kids, teenage girls. So because again of Donald Trump's administration, we've seen really huge reduction in the number of those criminals here in this country. They're being deported, they're being locked up, and deported afterwards. So that's an excellent thing. Again, trillions of dollars of corporate American funds have been repatriated back to the United States, which allowed creation of new businesses, new enterprises, hiring of, a countless number of good Americans, to to work and make a living as opposed to be staying on food stamps. In the previous administration under Obama for 8 years, we had the highest number. Tens of millions of Americans were on food stamps. Now the people don't need to apply for those food stamps because they're proud, to have the jobs and provide for the family, not just paying the public assistance, apartment bills. So that's a huge thing. You mentioned the free economic zones in depressed neighborhoods all across the country. I mean, it's an incredible, incredible benefit, not only to the residents or the communities, but for the country as a whole. As a financial advisor, I've seen multi-billion-dollar investment portfolios structured around the investments into free economic zones, which again, creates, a lot of wealth for the investors. Investors make money in those portfolios. When they sell the portfolios, they pay taxes. So the federal, the state, the local governments, they benefit by getting that tax flow.
Hold on, Gene. So I'm gonna. I hate to assume, but I'm gonna assume that that most Americans, and even like the polls even say, who do you trust more in the economy, Biden or Bush? That's one of the Biden or Trump, and that's where I wouldn't trust Bush. Just kidding. That's where he exceeds. So not that I don't want to go down that path. Is I think that we're comfortable with, or at least I'm comfortable with,
right,
knowing that he did a great job financially, economically, and that he will continue to do so. But one of the areas, and this is where I struggle with, Gene, is coming from a left background. I consider myself, it's interesting, I don't know if it's a term, but I consider myself socially liberal, professionally a conservative. I'm like a pro-business Democrat, right? So I want to get into some of the important stuff that is non-business, okay? So in Charlottesville, and I want to say, I don't have it, I'm going to paraphrase, when he said good people on both sides, and if you look at the full quote, he later on denounces, I believe, the alt-right and the KKK. So again, you're welcome to fact check me below. However, though, is I just need him, and I don't know why, but I just need him to stamp out the alt-right, far-right people that feel like they have a license to be racist. Whether he fosters it or not is another discussion. I just need them to not feel comfortable using his name and supporting him. And I just personally feel he hasn't done a great job at that. What are your thoughts?
Well, look, I mean, we have some nutcases on both ends of the spectrum. It just unfortunately reality.
Correct.
Even being a president of the U.S., you cannot control every lunatic which is out there. What I should be pointing out, and what I would like the people to be paying attention to, is horrible events that have been sweeping the country over the last few months.
Yeah.
That started as peaceful demonstrations. And again, God bless every peaceful American, which is looking to step outside, the residences and speak their minds. But what we have seen is an incredible violence, of burning buildings, destroying businesses, hurting people, residents, or just passerbys, including the little babies that get shot by the lunatics out there that bring guns to those peaceful demonstrations. We have seen, hundreds and hundreds by now of police officers, either wounded, crippled, hurt, some of them killed by, again, the peaceful protesters. What we have seen in the events in Wisconsin, again, the kid, Kyle Rittenhouse, that shot 3 people. But when you look at the video, you see that the first one of them attacked him with a skateboard, actually hit him on the back of the head. I'm surprised that his head did not explode, did not split open. And that's when he fired back in response. The second guy had a gun in his hand, and the kid was absolutely disciplined not to spray, shoot everybody around. He just shot his hand off, protecting himself, because his life was.
Yeah, but Gene, hold on. I don't disagree with you, and I don't think anybody will disagree with you. The first part of the tape, where I still can't believe this, where he got attacked, he shot back, right? But then the other part of the tape is, he has his hands up, which is the right thing to do with his AR-15 or whatever around him. People are saying, hey, he just shot somebody, walking towards the cops, assuming he's going to get arrested, assuming he's going to say, get on your hands, but the whole bit. He walks up to the car like almost, hey, take me. And the cops not only not arrest him, not stop him, but drive past him. I have a challenge that if that was an African-American male, that guy would just be dead. So I just, and that's not a Trump thing. And, I'm not saying that's a local for that individual cop in the car that looked at this white American and just decided not to bring him in. But I, I do believe the media is liberal. That's why I have my show. So we have an unfiltered show. I do believe in that. But I can't, Gene, I don't know if I can reconcile that they let him walk away. So, and I'm not blaming this on Trump, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but that's just not right,
Again, Tom, I'm not a police officer. I'm not an attorney representing that young fellow. All I know is that, look, they had major unrest with the fires, the people shooting, really hurting each other, and the police were running in a vehicle, towards into the fire, so to speak. While this young fellow, he was being chased by the mob, and then still being hit, and whatever else happened there. But my point is, look, we do have some lunacy on both ends of the spectrum. However, when you look at the riots, they are not being done by the conservative folks. Conservative folks, they're waving flags, they're making their statements, proclaiming whatever, their beliefs in American values, while it is the extreme left, whatever you want to call them, between Antifa and BLM, characters, which are trained Marxists, as their founders publicly stated multiple times. It's all over online, different outfits. So those are the folks which have been inflicting, billions of dollars in damage, including but not limited federal buildings, destroying historical monuments. It is definitely not the right folks.
Well, so hold on. I want to bring a good point. I will tell you, and I don't care what backlash I get, I believe that the true BLM movement gets watered down and hurt by Antifa, by some of these Marxist groups, by some of these violent protesters. And it sucks because there's a message there that needs to be heard, and there needs to be policy change, and it gets diluted by the riot. Just like they say there's good people on both ends, on the left there's a group of people, which I think is the large group of people, if not almost the absolute majority.
It's a very sizable group. It's not a dilution at this point. It's the fact that those extreme radical characters, they now took over the BLM movement. Anyone who has known me for longer than 30 seconds, who spend more than 30 seconds of their time speaking with me, they know that I am absolutely colorblind. Some of my best friends are, coming from African American backgrounds, and some of the worst human beings I've seen, they're the same color of the skin as myself. So it really comes to the point, what kind of person you are and what kind of principles you stand for. So if you stand for the principles that allow you to destroy, historical monuments and burn the properties and hurt, law enforcement folks out there, screaming, and standing behind those screams, hey, pigs and bacon, pigs and whatever, the slogans.
Now, Joe, hold on. I agree with you. And it's MLK said it's not the color of your skin, but the content of your character. So I agree with you. And here's the thing, what's different, though. In the past, it was, hey, I'm not racist. And, hey, I am not, I have black friends and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not minimizing what you're saying, but what I'm getting at is, that just shows we're not prejudiced, right? It shows we're not prejudiced, right? However, one of the challenges is right now is, and we could argue a little bit on systemic racism, but what I want to focus back on Trump, where there are policies that were just not right for dark communities, redlining by banks and that kind of stuff, right? So what I'm getting at is, and I want to go back towards Trump for a second, is I just feel he could have did a better job. Like with George Floyd, 96% of Americans said that was wrong. And you can't get 96% of Americans to agree on anything. So George Floyd could have been and should have been a unifying front for us to get together And I just felt he could have and should have. Like, this is how I feel. If he would have met with his family, if he could have maybe either sent in a video or gave a little bit more moral support towards the family of George Floyd, to me, that's not anti-cop. Like, he's so worried about keeping the law and order that, you know, he doesn't step out of his humane side. So just walk me through how you feel he's dealing with George Floyd and other social material events.
Well, again, I cannot speak for the president. You know, my thinking is that the riots, they erupted immediately following the death. And again, just for the record, I feel that regardless of the fact that Floyd was a career criminal, I mean, he had the rap sheet longer than, you know, some crazy, you know, career criminals out there. But the fact that he died the death that he did, you know, it's wrong. And my understanding is that the president, he stated clearly that it will be a full scale investigation, and those, you know, responsible, you know, they will be dealt with. But the fact itself that the riots erupted immediately, and those were not the riots where the people are protesting peacefully, but really, you know, as a result, we've seen massive destruction of properties. We have seen massive damage to the businesses, including but not limited to the black businesses. The black captain of all people, black retired police captain, has been killed by the rabid mob. So again, you mentioned Candace Owens. God bless her. You know, she's an absolutely incredible, you know, an ultra intelligent lady. I just wish that we had more people like herself in this country. But you know, she had an absolutely incredible program on which you stated, we, meaning, you know, the African Americans, we seem to be the only segment of population that seems to be, you know, making heroes out of criminals, and pretending to be victims decades, if not centuries, after the slavery has been abolished in this country. And she spoke very extensively about George Floyd. So again, you know, I'm not going to be able to go into details. It's not the purpose of this podcast, I guess. Wow. But I encourage anyone listening to this program to, you know, Google Candace Owens and watch her video, which is a very powerful video. Again,
but that's one of the, and I'm a huge fan of hers. But that's where I categorically differed with her. And I'm not disagreeing with you. What I am saying is, I believe they found like fentanyl in the system. I believe they found some illegal drugs. I think he had some personal challenges, but we all do that, but we all have personal challenges. At the end of the day, what shouldn't happen shouldn't happen. So we're gonna chalk it up to, you felt he did, you know, share some remorse and did share some stuff publicly. Twitter is his main domain. I kind of felt he could have did a little bit more, but that's why it's a free country, right? That's why we have this podcast to talk about it. So now let's talk about COVID. You know, COVID has been a national disaster, 200,000 lives, and it's so unfathomable just to even think about it. The economic toll, which is super secondary to the loss of life and so forth, and we've all been affected. So let's talk about a second. How are you, and support the best you can, how are you with Donald J. Trump's response to COVID? Let's go through that.
I applaud everything that the president has done, from shutting down the country when, again, the then, you know, candidate Joe Biden did not even say a word, and then he was fundamentally disagreeing with the decision of the president to shut down the country. They were calling him everything from, again, racist to bigot to what have you.
That was in March or late February. That's the one thing Biden, I think, has a little bit of a challenge, where he didn't come out to like April and say, hey.
Well, Biden has challenges with everything, you know, with, supporting the shutdown of the country to protect, you know, look, I mean, my heart is bleeding for every life lost, you know, due to COVID-19. Yeah. I'm very much familiar with that. My wife, she's a nurse, God bless her. You know, she has been on the front lines. She got sick with COVID, you know, taking care of the patients. Wow. So I'm very much familiar with the damage. But the thing is, if Donald Trump had not shut down the country, would have no 200,000, would have million, 2 million, God knows how many people would have, you know, as victims that fell to this COVID-19 pandemic. So I applaud what he has done. The fact that we are on path of developing and hopefully launching the vaccine is truly unprecedented. I mean, normally it would take years, if not a decade, to get anything advanced as far as what the president has done, as far as lifting the routine bureaucracy and restrictions and really expediting every stage of approval of that vaccine that hopefully will be approved, sometime in the near future and
Yeah.
save many more lives.
Yeah, I can back that up. I'm a veteran of the pharmaceutical industry, pharmaceutical and the medical device, but pharmaceutical alone 15 years, and it takes more than an act of Congress to get a drug approved. I think it's like 7.5 years, even just to get to review. So he did do a good job at partnering with the pharmaceutical and biotech companies, although it's not available yet, although it's not on the street. He did do a yeoman's test there. Can we agree at least, Gene? And we do agree on a lot of things, but can we agree on that he did a lot of? It's funny because he's a showman, right? Or at least historically been a showman, and usually has like maybe this, and he makes it out to be this, right? Like almost like the show and the buildings and bigger than who he is, and that kind of helped accelerate him in business and life. And God bless, that's part of marketing, right? Excellent marketer. That's nobody can take away from that. However, as president, I think it's the opposite. And I'm gonna probably get some shit for this, but it's I think he did more than what he said. Like meaning the COVID response, a lot of people have challenges with. I have some sort of challenges with it. However, he did shut down China. He did the European ban. He did do some stuff that, I felt was a little late, but that's fine. Either here nor there, that's Monday morning quarterback. However, though, is the rhetoric of, 15 people have it, it's going to go away. It's going to mysteriously disappear. I just kind of feel like some of the stuff that he says, or a lot of the stuff that he says, undermines his efforts. And I know the Republicans and supporters are like, well, he's irreverent, he's a straight shooter, all that kind of stuff. But Gene, you got to give me something on, like the rhetoric definitely has hurt his presidency. And if he loses, it'll hurt his legacy. So walk me through some of the rhetoric behind the COVID, racial stuff and give me your opinion on that.
Well, speaking about, again, the COVID issue, Tom, we all know. Look, I mean, nobody. He's a politician. He is definitely not a doctor specializing in that type of, diseases. Unfortunately, I have some very good friends. I'm talking about the world recognition physicians specializing in this issue. Not COVID, but similar kind of, whatever we had in the past few years coming from Asia. And they cannot come to any consensus, as far as how dangerous it can be, what the ramifications, immediate and intermediate term could be. We're seeing faces again of arguably the global world recognition, from Dr. Fauci to, the whole gang that we have seen repeatedly, sometimes on a daily basis, repeatedly seeing them delivering their presentations and their speeches and their opinions on those daily or bi-daily briefings coming from the White House. So again, the president cannot just speak something that he feels. I mean, in my opinion, pretty much every statement he made regarding the COVID-19 issue has been based on what he has been fed, provided by Dr. Fauci and his team. So I cannot see any huge inconsistencies out there, as much as some people would like to believe they have been. So,
my goal is to not change your mind. You feel how you feel, but my goal is to, because again, we're going to do this podcast, and I will find some people that are against Trump. So your message is he did a good job. He some of the social issues. He stood behind law and order. He stood behind kind of the establishment, and then you're comfortable there. And I respect that. Again, that's why we have this pod. We need to have ideas. We need to exchange ideas. We need to share ideas. And you can categorically disagree with Gene totally, but the very least, what does Voltaire said? I may disagree with what you're saying, but I'll fight to the death for your right to say it. So I truly believe that. So I want to conclude with and you've given some facts. Facts don't have feelings, and I appreciate that. I want you to, if you listen this long or watch this long, why should Trump get reelected? Give us the under 5 minute pitch as to why he should stay in office.
Um, all the issues, Tom, that we've been discussing over the last, whatever amount of time on this program, he secured the border, more than any previous president. He created more jobs than any other president in history. We have seen a truly unprecedented economic expansion of the U.S. economy over the last, 3.5 years as he has been the president of the United States. We have seen incredible reforms benefiting the African American community. The jail reform, where a lot of people spending years, if not decades, doomed to be spending years, if not decades, in jails. They were let out of jails because they were not significant, not hugely, grave crimes. So he let those people out of jails, and now they're productive members of the American society. We have seen the numbers speak for themselves. I mean, we're seeing, even based on the non-liberal media, we're seeing non-liberal media, we're seeing the double of the African Americans which are looking to vote for Donald Trump. I mean, they feel confidence in his presidency. They appreciate the fact, that he created so many more jobs for the African American community. So to them, it means a lot, regardless of our backgrounds, African American, Asian, Caucasians. Most of the people, that they feel that, hey, keeping America safe, keeping America protected from the outside enemies is hugely important. We have seen al-Baghdadi, which has been destroyed, based on the policy of President Trump. We have seen Qasem Soleimani, out of Iran, the head of Iranian guards, who inflicted more damage to the American military and innocent civilians than probably any other. We're talking about thousands and thousands of lives that have been taken based on his activities. He has been taken out. I mean, to me and most of the common sense people, it should mean volumes. The events that we're seeing just over the last few weeks in the Middle East, where United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, they're signing the peace agreement with the eternal nemesis, Israel. I mean, it speaks volumes, because the people understand, hey, we can have different disagreements, but we should not be butchering each other, inflicting damages to our population and the countries overall. So I have to believe that after then, many other Middle Eastern, Arab states will follow example, and they will be signing those peace agreements, which again will create peace in the Middle East, and people are going to be enjoying prosperity, and will become our next global trading partners. So all of those things, I feel, are extremely important to any American, regardless of how they've been voting in the past, without, again, any labels, Democrats or Republicans. I know it's important to me and my family. It's extremely important to my friends, my clients, who, again, may be sitting on different sides of the aisle as far as their political affiliation, but they completely agree with me, as far as those statements. So I hope it's going to resonate with the audience. Come November the 3rd, unfortunately, probably based on the environment that we're going to be voting this year with a lot of mail-in ballots, we're not going to be able to find out the results. The election date, it may take a few days, it may take a few weeks, but I do hope and pray that Donald Trump gets reelected, and we'll continue our path for making America better and stronger and safer.
Well, one thing I just want to give Gene a compliment before we conclude is, whether we like it or not, it's very difficult in this environment to speak out politically, especially if you're a Trump supporter. It could hurt your business. People will protest you. They'll go against you. But you actually raise your hand and say, hey, I'm a Trump supporter unapologetically. And although you might have lost a client or two, for the most part, people respected that and actually helped your business, right?
Absolutely. As you stated, look, I mean, the people who have fundamental disagreements with my support of the President Trump, they chose not to do business with me. Some prospective clients, they were very blunt about that, but at the same time, the people that do share my beliefs, my convictions, my passion, which is, again, based on the facts, not emotions, they ended up actually doing more business with me and making introductions of the people that share the same beliefs and the same values. Like I said before, as I repeatedly stated over the course of this conversation, Tom, it's not about the skin color. It's about what we feel is the best for this country and the people living in America. I proudly fly, a huge American flag outside of my house on Long Island, along with all the neighbors, surrounding me and living up and down from me. We're very strong in that, and I hope that we're going to have more and more people that are going to come around and, putting aside the name tags and political affiliations of the past, they're going to make a very, very strong discriminating decision based on the facts.
Love it. And feel free to leave comments below. The goal of this show, be respectful. If you disagree with Gene, that's okay. If you want to make a counterpoint, that's okay. But Gene, welcome back to the New Theory podcast. How can we find you?
I'm a financial advisor in Midtown Manhattan, right outside of Grand Central. I'm going to post, I'm going to send you the updated numbers. Tom, well, the numbers are actually the same we had last time, but you can post those numbers at the bottom of the show if anyone would like to speak with me about anything related to wealth management, retirement planning, risk management. I'll be glad to sit down or do it over the phone, Zoom call, complimentary second opinion. We'll be happy and obliged to do that.
And honestly, like I said, that's what makes this country great. You can speak out about your political beliefs. You should not get any blowback because it's how somebody feels. And then also, it's good to have a business that, people may align with your beliefs or not align with your beliefs. At the end of the day, as a wealth manager, that we know is a great wealth manager. We'll have another discussion on something more topical to that. But Gene, thank you for coming back. And I appreciate it as always, my friend.
It's always a pleasure, Tom. Again, thank you so much for inviting me, and congratulations to all the good things happening in your life, professionally and personally. All right.
Thank you, my friend.